Hey everybody, my name is Philip. Earlier this year, I decided to start reading the Bible from front to end, all the way through, and I wanted to kind of capture on video a little bit of a journal on what I'm reading, what I'm learning, and I wanted to be able to share that with you all. Really, I just want to learn more about the character of God and what lessons He has for me today that I can live out in my life. So I hope that these videos are beneficial to you in some way, and I hope you enjoy them. If God was going to write a sermon about your life today, what would that sermon be about? Would you like it? I'm reading 1 Kings 14, verse 1 through 20. Now, in this particular passage, it's about King Jeroboam. He's not on good footing with the Lord. He's turned his back really on him in a lot of ways. He's setting up altars to false gods. He's worshiping idols. He's leading the people into idolatry. So he's not really following the Lord. Well, Jeroboam, he finds himself with a sick child, Abijah. His son's name is Abijah. Get over it! Abijah's sick, so Jeroboam, rather than turning to God in humility, says to his wife, "Wife of mine, please go to the prophet Ahijah," not to be confused with Abijah. Abijah's the sick kid, remember? Ahijah is the prophet. So he tells his wife, go to Ahijah, bring Abijah, see if Ahijah will heal Abijah. And if he does, that would be good. Whew. The wife in the scenario, could have said something like, Jerry, I don't think we should do that, Jerry. How can we ask for a blessing from Lord when we're not really following the Lord in our lives? She could have said that, but she didn't. Jeroboam, what I found interesting here is he wants the blessing from God, but he doesn't want to change any of his actions in his life to honor God. It's kind of like saying, I would love to be healthy and fit, but I don't really want to eat healthy, and I don't really want to exercise. It's kind of like saying, I would like to have a paycheck every single week, but I don't really ever want to do any of the work. Sounds good. Jeroboam wanted the blessing of his son being healed, but he didn't want to change his life. So rather than ask God in a humble manner, heal my son, he sends his wife, dressed up or disguised, to Ahijah to try to trick God, which we all know works out so well. So little did they know, God came to Ahijah and he said, hey, just so you know, spoiler alert, Jeroboam sent his wife to come here under the guise of being somebody else, but don't be fooled, it's her, for sure. So Ahijah says, hey, what's up, Jeroboam's wife? How you doing? Why are you pretending to be somebody else? And so he immediately just kind of calls her out on it. He says, hey, I've got a message for you to give to Jeroboam, your husband, from the Lord. Ahijah tells her that the Lord says, Jeroboam, I'm not happy with you, man. You've turned your back on me. You've set up altars to false gods. You've constructed idols. You've done basically exactly everything the opposite of my servant David had done. And my servant David was someone that God calls someone after his own heart. So because of this, because you've made these poor choices, I'm essentially cutting you off. You and your entire line will be destroyed, and your kingdom will be taken away from you by somebody else. So boy, that's kind of not what you wanted to hear when you show up to get healing for your son. But yeah, what can we learn from Jeroboam? Well, I think a few things. One is that God sees right through our appearances. God doesn't look at the outward appearance, he looks at the heart. And we can do our best to try to conceal things from God. We can hide things from others when we go to church. We can put on a certain face. We can give all the right answers. But the reality of the matter is, whatever is in our heart is what God is looking at. The second thing I think this teaches us is that leadership in any capacity has a responsibility tied to it. With great power comes great responsibility. Yes, that's it. So, Jeroboam's the king of this nation. He basically makes decisions and choices that lead the people away from God instead of pointing them to God. And because of that, he leads his wife down this path of deception. he leads his sick child into a pretty bad situation, really. And, there's just a lot of things that I think we can glean from that, and that the decisions that we make, although we think they might just be impacting us, they have repercussions, and they also impact those around us. So if I made a decision to sell our house, that would impact my wife. She would be like, "What have you done? Why did you sell our house without talking to me about it?" And I'd be like, "Well, I just wanted to live in an RV down by the river." Sorry, I got sidetracked. The third thing that I thought was interesting in this passage was in verse 12, Abijah, who's the son, remember, he's sick still. So Ahijah says, "Hey, your son's going to die as soon as you get home. He's going to die." But what's interesting, in verse 13, he says, "All of Israel will mourn for him and bury him. He's the only member of your family who will have a proper burial. For this child is the only good thing that the Lord, the God of Israel, sees in the entire family of Jeroboam." This child is the only shining light in the darkness that is Jeroboam's family. So while the child still dies, I found it kind of interesting that he's still sort of called out as being a good thing. God recognizes that, so he saw something good in this child, and I think that despite what our circumstances are, whether we are in a workplace or in school or whatever, if we're in the midst of those situations where there's not a lot of honor towards God, but we still choose to honor God in our words and our actions, God's going to see that, he's going to appreciate that, and he is ultimately going to reward that, honor that. So I thought that was cool. So here's the challenge. Here's what I thought. If God were to write a sermon about your life, what would that sermon be about? After you've answered that question, the follow-up to it is, what are you going to do about it today? Do you need to make choices that are better? Do you need to live your life in a manner more pleasing to God behind closed doors? Does what you're doing behind closed doors match what you're doing outside of those closed doors? I don't know. Hard questions to answer, for sure. But I know one thing. Won't he do it?